Arthur awoke to the sound of a drop of water falling onto his forehead. His eyelids were heavy, and his mind felt cracked like the damp stone walls around him. His face was pressed against the earthen ground, separated from it only by a thin layer of rotting straw that served as his bedding. He slowly lifted his head, and his neck seemed to splinter with the effort. The pain was not only in his body. The pain was the place itself. He tried to remember. How had he come here? Flashes, a mocking trial in a great hall, faces hidden beneath hoods, a judge whose eyes were as cold as a dagger, and a wooden gavel striking the table with a sound that still echoed in his ears. The sentence, execution at dawn. Tomorrow. Today. Dawn was only a few hours away. Arthur stood, leaning against the wall, and felt the stone pass the chill of graves into his body. Faint moonlight slipped through a narrow crack in the wall. The prison's only eye. The light traced a pale line across the floor, separating him from the darkness. Arthur stood in the darkness, staring at the light. The light represented the life he would lose, and the life he had never lived. He felt along his body. The garment he wore was worn thin, torn at the shoulder. He touched his neck. It was still warm. Tomorrow ropes would touch it, or a guillotine blade would fall, or the executioner's sword would sever it. No one had told him the method of execution. Perhaps that was part of the punishment. Ignorance of the form of death. A foul smell drew him to a bucket in the corner. There was some water in it. He bent down and drank greedily. The water was cold and bitter, but it was wet. He felt life running down his throat. For the last time. He returned to the wall and sat beneath the sliver of light. He turned his face away from the bucket, from the straw, from the walls. He focused on the light. He tried to remember his mother's voice. He could not. He tried to recall his beloved's face. It faded. All he could remember was the smell of bread he had eaten in the market a week before. A warm loaf sold by an old woman. The bread had been warm. Tomorrow, his body would be cold. He asked himself why. What was his crime? They said he had betrayed the Lord. They said he had conspired. But he had only been searching for his daily bread, for a piece of land to cultivate. Was dreaming a crime? In this kingdom, it seemed that dreaming was the greatest crime of all. He heard footsteps in the distance. Heavy steps on stone stairs. His heart pounded violently, thinking they had come for him too soon. But the footsteps stopped at another cell. He heard screams, "Please!" Then silence. His neighbor was being killed. He waited until the sound of the departing steps faded, then returned to silence. He looked at his hands. They were trembling. He clenched them. He tried to think of something beautiful. He remembered a day when he was a child, running after a butterfly in a field. The sun had been golden, and the air had been pure. He closed his eyes. For the first time in hours, he felt a momentary peace. But the peace did not last. The question of execution returned, piercing his mind. What would death be like? Would it be like sleep, or would it be pain tearing the soul from the body? Suddenly, he heard a strange sound. The scrapings of stone. He turned toward the back of the cell. There was a large stone that seemed as though it had not moved in centuries, but the sound had come from behind it. He pushed the stone with his foot. It did not move. He shoved it with his shoulder. It shifted slightly. The scraping grew louder. Behind the stone was a small opening. A narrow tunnel leading who knew where. Arthur looked at the tunnel, then at the slit of light. The tunnel was pitch dark and unknown. It might mean death, or it might mean freedom. And the slit of light, which had represented life only moments ago, now represented certain death. His breathing quickened. He had to decide. Should he remain in the cell and wait for dawn, dying a certain but honorable death, as they called it? Or should he crawl into the darkness, like a rat in its hole, toward the unknown, where he might die under falling stones, by a guard's hand, or perhaps emerge into the world again? He stood for a moment, looking at the light. The moon had shifted, and the light had grown dimmer. Dawn was approaching. He bent down and crawled into the opening. He entered the tunnel. It was narrow and suffocating, filled with earth and the grinding of the stone. He crawled on. The farther he went, the deeper the darkness became. He could see nothing. He crawled on hope, on fear, on a desire to live. After several minutes, he felt cold air. He lifted his head. He saw a star. A single star shining in the black sky. The tunnel was nearing the surface. He climbed quickly, pushing dirt aside, forcing his way upward. He reached an opening and lifted his head out. He was outside the prison, in a rear courtyard behind high walls. But he was in the open air. Then he heard a voice behind him. "Where are you, little rat?" He turned. A guard stood only a few steps away, sword drawn. The guard was smiling. Arthur looked at the guard, then at the sky. The stars were fading. Dawn was breaking beyond the horizon. Arthur smiled a pale smile. He did not regret it. He had chosen